You're listening to Conversations Ignite.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am joined by Jessica today. How are you doing today?
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad you could join us. Would you like to start out by telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I live in San Diego and I grew up in Minnesota, and I sometimes talk a little bit funny because of being from Minnesota. So if that comes out, oh, don't you know? And I spend my life as a life shucker. And what that is really helping people realize that they're the pearl rather than the grit that happens in their life. And so I work with individuals and organizations with different workshops and coaching, and I just absolutely love it. And then the other part of the metaphor is that people also have shells around their pearls, and we close them in times of fear, which is totally okay and often appropriate. But if we're living in our shell too long, we start to be lonely, isolated, constricted. We're living in the dark, and you got to shuck it open with love. And so I just love that metaphor because it resonates for me. And I also get to laugh all the time because if you can think about all the different plays on the word, it makes for some good chuckles throughout the day.
You actually took my first question away because I was going to ask you to explain shucking. And you already said it was a metaphor. Now, how do you correlate that to personal transformation?
Yeah, so first part is a little bit what I said about the grit and the pearl. So it's the grit inside the oyster that actually creates the beautiful, beautiful pearl. And I think that's true for all of us as well. It's the rough moments that we go through in our lives. What happens though is often people start to identify with the grit and think that that actually is who they are, or that they've done something wrong, or that they're bad, or there's something to be ashamed of. And that's really what I work with people on is everybody is beautiful and wonderful. We all do things we aren't necessarily proud of, but we can't let that define us and hold us back from actually living our best life. And so I just help people see that they're human and that they are so much more miraculous and wonderful than they realize. And there's so many different ways to do that. And it could be anything from journaling to becoming aware of our self-talk. It could be adding more movement in our lives to just have that energy flowing, and so many more ways to do that. So that's how I like to share it with people.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, how did you come up with that? How did you come up with shucking? How did that metaphor just come into your head?
It started because I am anti-labels, and I feel like labels constrict us and really don't allow us to be fully who we are. So when I moved from corporate America into life coaching, I didn't want to just call myself a life coach because people had preconceived notions of what a coach was or was not. And I wanted to be who I was. And so I started playing around with a bunch of different ideas and concepts and really trying to think about what I wanted to bring to the world. And while I was in that state of reflection, I had my very first client, and he was amazing. And he was this super stuffy corporate executive. And I can say that because that's who I used to be. And he was exactly me. And so he started working with me, and he was my only client. And what happened was we kept working on the same thing over and over. And as a new coach, I thought my success was determined by his success. So I was like, oh, why can't I get this guy to change? Well, I know now that his change has more to do with him than me, and I'm just the guide. But at this time, I didn't know that. And so I was working with him, and he was like digging his foot in, and he wasn't changing. And the night before, I had some oysters with friends, and we were shucking. And this guy was like in my office, and he was all tight and closed up, and he wasn't going to change, even though he wanted to change. And I all of a sudden just bust out and I said, "Oh my God, do I have to shuck you?" Yeah. Yeah. So super stuffy corporate executive. I just told him I was going to shuck. Yes, shuck him, not the other thing. But he looked at me and I sat there in this awkward silence. I had no idea how he was going to react. I was shocked myself that I just said that. And I just sat there and I watched my whole career disappear because I was like putting so much pressure on this one person for my success, and which is also a false notion now, I realize, but I didn't at the time. And I just sat there and I thought, what am I going to do now that I can't be a coach? Because I had spent years trying to figure out what I was going to do. And all of a sudden, he started belly laughing. He keeled over and he's like, "Did you just say you're going to shuck me?" And I was like, I'm not sure how to answer that question. And ultimately, he just started laughing and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I get it. I need to open up and I need to do the work, don't I?" And all of a sudden now I thought I was the best coach in the world, and like the skies parted, and it was so funny watching what my experience was of it. And then I went home and I played with the concept. I was like, well, that is kind of an interesting thing. And it worked for this person. It helped them really see what they needed to do. And so there came the metaphor. And I've been using it ever since. So over 10 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. What what a way to come up with a metaphor. Now, you had said that you were in a corporate job before you were a life coach. What did you do before life coaching?
I did a lot of M&A work, and the last job I held was actually on one of the divestitures I worked on. I ran international operations and commercialization for one of our product lines. So it was a good job. It was intellectually stimulating, but it was soul sucking.
Gotcha. Now, what made you want to quit that and come to life coaching?
Well, I knew I wanted to leave the corporate space, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I have an entrepreneurial spirit, and I played out a couple different ideas, and all of them had technology involved. And I had already worked in tech for 15 years, and it really wasn't my favorite thing. And so I kept thinking, wow, I'm designing something that I don't like to start with. So why would I do that? And what happened then is I took a master's program at the University of Santa Monica, and the program was called Spiritual Psychology. And it was 2 years of breaking through my patterns, breaking through my fears, finding my voice, learning about my own intuition. And it was so liberating that I decided I wanted to give that back to the world. So that's how it happened. It wasn't easy. Leaving that safety, or what felt like safety, of the corporate job took me quite some time to make that jump. But I'm so happy I did, because like I wake up every day excited about what I get to do. So I feel pretty blessed.
That's amazing. It's always amazing to get up and do what you love. It really is.
Yes.
So what was the turning point for you when you realized your life experiences could help others?
Hmm. I would say once I felt like I healed from them, then I could use them to help others. And it took a while to get there. So I didn't share anything about my father, who experienced something called schizophrenia. I didn't share that until recently, because I had to work through a lot of that on my own. And so often I see people working through their problems as a coach or as a therapist. And listen, everybody's human, and there's no right or wrong way, but I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to actually be in a place where I felt healed and strong enough to use those as stories to help other people. And yeah, so different parts of my life, I have been using different parts of my journey, and now I feel like I can use everything in service of other people.
Oh, wow. Um, so you've definitely overcome some personal challenges. You talked about your father's schizophrenia. You also, I've heard, had a traumatic brain injury in Nepal.
I did. I was hiking the Manaslu circuit, and we were supposed to go over the pass that night, and I just couldn't even function. My whole body was shutting down. And so they don't fly helicopters in the middle of the night. So we had to get me out of elevation. So the guide and my Sherpa left the rest of the group. And fortunately, there were other guides and Sherpas there to help them. But they took me down in elevation, and it was such a surreal experience. It was below zero, and my body was so hot that I wanted to like rip off all my clothes, and they kept making me put them back on. And it was weird because like I was in my brain, but I wasn't. Like it was like, and I was in a whole different world. And I'm just grateful that they were there to support me and ultimately probably saved my life. And so once we got down in elevation, we called the helicopter the next morning, took me into Kathmandu, and that's where I did my healing before coming back home. So it was pretty wild.
Wow, that must have been really, really scary.
It wasn't until later, because I think I wasn't really in my brain and in my body fully. It just was something that was happening. And then once I started to heal from it, the gravity of the situation did hit me. I just couldn't even believe what I had been through, and grateful that I did survive.
Wow. So with all the personal challenges that you've had, how did each of them kind of shape your personal philosophy and your career path?
Each one has probably had different influences on my life, but all of them have made me really embrace life and live it fully, I would say. So, um, with my father and just some of the trauma I experienced with his experience with schizophrenia, that one really helped me be more compassionate and empathic for people. And it also just has taught me about total acceptance. And I love living in that way. Of course, I'm still human. I find my judgments and places I am not totally accepting. But overall, it's pretty magical to be able to sit and have dinner with somebody I just met on the street, or, some business person that's been wildly successful, and really just see them through the eyes of love. And it's so that's been a huge influence on my life. And then Nepal, really, that one taught me that I had to slow down a little bit more, because I do think I had been overdoing it with my body and life and everything. And so I really learned to go within a little bit more from that journey. And it's still hard for me to slow down because there's so much life to live, but I do know the value of rest, and I try to incorporate it in as much as I can. And then another gritty experience I went through was caring for a loved one through stage 4 cancer. And that was the first time I really had to face death. And that was really special because I was always afraid of it up until then. And in that situation, I started to see what a miracle life is. I've always been grateful for life and, lived fully, but this just really brought to me that we are all miracles, and every breath we take is truly miraculous. And so that also led me to create my film. I just released a documentary about my dad and myself. And I think I needed to do it because after caring for the loved one through cancer, who healed, by the way, which we were very blessed, and my heart goes to those that have lost people. But I needed to do something meaningful, and that's where the film was born from.
Oh wow. I definitely do want to talk about your film in a little bit. Um, Now, you just talked about the loved one that you cared for. How did that how did that kind of influence your approach to self-improvement and coaching?
One thing it did is it actually affirmed that I was on the right path. It 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 showed me how important every moment is of life, and if you're not doing something that you truly truly love, it's time to make a change. And knowing how much I missed coaching and my workshops and retreats while I was caregiving showed me that it was the right path for me. The other thing was, even though I was caring for them 24/7, I also learned I needed to do something for myself during that time. It wasn't a lot because the nature of the experience was pretty intense and demanding. But even if it was just a couple minutes a day to write my book or meditate or do some breath work, I found that you can still make yourself a priority even in a situation like that. So when I'm working with people, it's helpful to have that as an example because, they might be a busy parent or busy with their job, and I can relate to them and show them it's still possible to make sure you're part of your equation. And so it's been beautiful in a lot of ways, and I've learned so much more that I'm probably just not even remembering at the moment. But it was a profound experience.
Oh wow. You mentioned just a second ago that you also have a book out?
I do. It's called Shuck This Way. And it's different pearls of wisdom that I've learned through coaching in how to bring the best out of people. And so it's a really simple book. Each page is colorful and is one concept to just think about. And yeah, so it's my little gift to the world. And it was what I worked on while I was a caregiver. So it's beautiful to see that I have something in addition to this person's health and wellness for that time. It's kind of my little reminder of that point in my life.
Oh wow, that's amazing. If any of my listeners would like to purchase it, where could they purchase it from?
They can just find it on Amazon. And I also have a free e-copy. So if anybody wants that, they can just email me at jessica@lifeshucker.com.
Oh wow, awesome.
Yeah.
I was not aware that you had a book also.
Oh, lots of little surprises.
So can you kind of talk about growing up with your father and schizophrenia, kind of what it was like, just so our listeners can kind of understand?
Yeah, so the way it expressed itself with my father was a lot of violence and rage. It's not like that for everyone. Your neighbor could actually have schizophrenia and be totally normal and natural and not have violence in their world. But definitely with my father, it came out that way. And so I lived with him until I was about 7, and then my mom broke us free, which was such a gift because it was such a just hard environment to be with him and never really knowing what dad we were going to get. And so then I spent about 25 years not in communication with him because it was unsafe and it felt dangerous. And emotionally, I just really wasn't strong enough to deal with some of the things that came with his illness. And, he would accuse me of causing all the problems. And when you're a little kid, I really believed it. So I thought I was the one that created this dynamic and really took that to heart. And so that led to me to being like an overachiever and trying to earn love and like all these patterns that I've had to spend my life unwinding. And in that time, he would still stalk me and show up in places unexpectedly. And that was scary because it was always like I was looking over my shoulder to see if something bad was going to happen. And I didn't really get to live present in the moment because I was always worried what might happen to me or my family. I mean, to this day, my dad's actually passed away now. And to this day, I still talk to my mom almost daily just because it was a habit I developed to make sure she was safe. And, there's a lot of patterns like that I did develop. And for anybody listening who might relate to some of this, I just want to give them hope that healing is possible because I have come so far when I look back at who I was and how scared I lived. And it is possible to get to the other side. So I just want to shed love and light to those that are in the heart of it. And yeah, and for those of you that want to know more, please reach out. I'm happy to share because my whole goal in life is to break the stigmas. I don't really understand schizophrenia, and I don't think anybody really does. And so I want to like flip it upside down and inside out and really challenge our world to say, well, what if something's not actually wrong with my father? But what if he had a superpower that we just actually don't understand? What if there's more to it that we could actually learn from him? And so I really invite everybody just to be curious, but also be safe, right? Because if anybody's in a dangerous situation, please, please, please take care of yourself. And even with doing that, get curious about what might this be and how could I look at this differently and how could I relate to them differently, which is true for so much of life, I think.
Wow, that's amazing. Just to come from that kind of bad situation and see it all and come to where you are today. That's really amazing.
Thank you.
How Oh, you're very well. You're very, very welcome. So how do you help clients identify their shells and what are the first steps in shucking them open?
It's always different depending on the person. And it starts with a conversation. So I'll sit with somebody for a couple hours and dig into what their life is like and where they think life could be different. So maybe they're stuck in a career that they don't like, or maybe they're in a wonderful relationship and just want to make it stronger and build better communication. There's so many different possibilities of what's available to people. So I just start where they're at. And the other thing that happens with that is I start to show them what's possible, because often what happens is we get stuck in our own routines. We're living inside of a shell and we don't even realize it sometimes. So by showing how something might be different, it gives them possibility and say, oh, wait, I didn't realize I didn't have to stay with this job forever, or I didn't realize that we could strengthen our communication together, or whatever it might be for that person. And then I give them tools to practice, because that's where the work really comes in. Is we can talk about different concepts, but it's really in applying the concept to someone's life and experimenting to see if that works for them or not. So I might have somebody write down all the harsh judgments they have of themselves. And maybe it's 3, maybe it's 300, depending on how that person relates to themselves. And then what I have them do is I have them change that thought. So if they think they are too old to start something new, I work with them to really change their thinking and say, gosh, I have more wisdom. So it might actually be easier to start something new because I have practice, or I have the resources, or whatever it might be. And so that would maybe be one tool. Sometimes we'll lay out action plans for them. So if let's say they want to write a book, so they have to write for 5 minutes every day for the next 10 days. So it's really fun because I get to get creative based on what that person really wants in their life, because it's not about teaching them how to live my life, because my life's right for me and might not be right for them. So it's more about getting creative to help them live their life in a better way.
Interesting. So how would a person realize that they should maybe seek out a life coach?
Well, I'm a little biased. I think everybody could have a life coach. So I even have a coach because I know that I have my own limitations and love learning from other people's perspectives. But some real indicators would be if you feel stuck and you're not sure what to do or where to go, that would be one thing. Or if you know inside that you could be living a different life and that your heart is really calling for something else, that's also a good indicator to explore coaching or therapy or any of these healing modalities. And then there's also people, I'll work with a lot of people that are successful and they just want to get to the next level of success. And so it's growing their confidence and growing their creativity and courage and all of that. And so I think there's a statistic like fairly high. I'm gonna butcher this, but let's say 50% or 75% of the top executives at Fortune 100 companies all have coaches, because it helps them think bigger. It helps them break through. And a coach is, if the right coach is in your corner, they're neutral, because they don't have a hidden agenda with your organization or your life, right? You have a very clear agreement. So they get to say whatever other people might not be saying as well, depending on how strong your coach is. Some coaches aren't as bold, but I'm a little bold.
Wow, interesting. So it's not just for people that think they need help, it's also for people to succeed even more than what they're at right now.
You got it. Yep.
Awesome. So can you walk us through like a transformative moment when a client really embraces the life shucker process? So like when they really realize that it works?
A recent one, I had a client come to me and they wanted to go to Harvard and get their MBA. And we dug into why that was important. What about going to Harvard? What about getting your MBA at this time in your career? And it was a beautiful conversation. But what came out from that conversation is this particular person didn't feel like they had enough experience or credentials to get to the next part of their career, but they hadn't tried. So they were going to spend 2 years, and I don't even know how much, maybe $150,000, $250,000 to go to Harvard in order to get to that next part of their life. And instead, I gave the invitation of, what if you are already ready? What if you just actually have to try and see what happens? And this person agreed to try for a set amount of time. And guess what? They got their dream job within like a month of putting themselves out there. And so they got to save all that time and that money. Not that going to Harvard's bad, but it really is about why we're doing something. If you're going to Harvard because it's been the dream and like it makes your heart sing, amazing, go do that. And if it's something you feel like you're obligated to do, that's where I encourage people to really question what that obligation might be or what that fear or obstacle is and see if there's another way to get there. And that's true with so many different things, whether somebody's trying to save for a vacation or start singing in their church choir or whatever it might be. So it's really beautiful to watch the lights go on and then to have them come back and say, wow, you just saved me 2 years of my life and all this money, and it's so much fun.
So, what are some common misconceptions that people have when it comes to self-improvement, and how do you help shift their perspectives?
Great question. One, that people feel like it should be faster than it is. And so I try to teach them that it's a process as opposed to just a light switch. And that's really important because people can be pretty hard on themselves. So if they start something like coaching and think they should get it in a week, because so much of our society is about instant gratification. And it's easy to think that this should just happen quickly. Also, because people don't always share how long a journey might take. And we don't have like the real information to draw our own conclusions and expectations. And so when I work with somebody, I work with them for a minimum of 6 months and often for a couple years because behavior change just takes time. And so that is one of them. Some people come to me thinking that they could fail at coaching. And to me, that shows me a little bit about their personality, that there's other places in their life they're afraid of failing. But with coaching, you can't fail. It's really about what you're ready for at that time. Now, you can get more out of it by putting more time and energy into it, but you can't fail. And so it's worth trying and experimenting with if somebody's called to do it or if it sparks something in them. So those would be a couple things I run into.
I gotcha. So if that happens, how do you kind of shift their perspective?
That takes time and it takes building trust. And it's really up to them because I don't have any control over what their perspective is. I can just offer ideas from experiences or from other client stories. And then I let them come up with their own conclusions from that. But all of these things are really opportunities for coaching. So if I invite them to experiment in a new idea or a new way of being, and it works for them, then they tend to buy into it and adopt that idea or behavior in their life. And so it's really just having these open and honest conversations. I'll tell you, most of our disappointment in life comes from the gap between expectation and reality. Because if we expect something to be different than it is, it's that space in between where our disappointment comes from. And so a lot of my work is bringing those together. And I explain that to people because wherever we have an expectation that's off, it can lead to being upset or different feelings that are uncomfortable or unhealthy. And so that's part of the work I do with people, is like coming into acceptance, like hey, I got a dad that was abusive. Like, okay, I can't change that, but I can change how I look at that. And I can change how I let that affect my life in some ways. And so I just show them where they can reclaim some of their power, and then the results speak for themselves. So once they start to see like, hey, that actually worked, or um, give me more of that, it's fun to have that relationship for the longer term so they can build on that and keep growing.
Now, I'm assuming that not every client you have is successful.
I had to fire one client.
Okay, so pretty good success rate. Um,
Yeah.
Now, if you have somebody that kind of it just is not going in the right direction, how do you handle that so it doesn't get to that point of having to, I guess, fire somebody?
The one person I fired was early on in coaching, and that was because I was still learning. And I just did not set the right expectations in what coaching would be like with this person. And for some reason, they thought I was the one changing their life as opposed to them showing up and doing the work to change their own life. And so we tried to work through that. This person had designed a world around them where everybody did everything for them. And so when I fired that person and wrote them their check back, they were pretty shocked because, they had so much money and people around them that were just taking the money. And I was like, I'm not here to just take your money. Like, I want you to get results. And um, so I share that because I've just gotten better of setting expectations in the beginning of the coaching. And what that looks like is somebody might come to me and say, I want to get married and I want to work on bringing a partner into my life. Well, I cannot guarantee that they're going to find the right person in the amount of time that we're going to work together. But I can tell them that you're going to build your own self-trust and self-confidence, and you're going to attract in different types of people doing this kind of work, but you've got to really do the work. And so that's a big part of the coaching experience is setting the expectations in the beginning. And what's really beautiful is often what happens is somebody starts working with me for one particular reason, and through the work and as the trust develops, they start to bring more and more from their heart to the surface. So, for example, one person might come to me and say, I want to work on having more work-life balance. And we help them prioritize the things that are important in their life. And then what comes out is I actually just really want to quit my job. And I'm afraid to say it out loud because I have this family I'm supporting and I don't know how we're going to survive. But it might take someone a couple months to really admit what their real dream is. So that's why the time's important too, because some of us bury our secret desires a little deeper than others.
Wow. Now, I'm sure some of my listeners right now are wondering, what are some of the scenarios that you deal with as a life coach? What are some of the issues that some people might come for you for help?
Work is an easy one that a lot of people will come to get a seat at the table. Maybe they want to get a promotion or have a stronger voice in the organization, or look at why they aren't making the kind of money they think they should be. And then there's others, such as guiding people through a cancer journey. So I've had people hire me because th- they need to be confident in making the choices on their healing journey, and want to make sure that they're tuning into what the right choices are for them, because there's so many choices sometimes when dealing with our health and healing. And also, I have found that they might be afraid to talk about death with their partner. And so I'm that place where they can talk about their real fears, because maybe they don't want to scare their family. And so the environment I create is really sacred and safe for them to share what they're most afraid of, and then maybe help give them some language to talk to their family and really bring it into the relationship in a healthy and loving way, so everybody can be part of the healing. That would be another scenario. I've had people hire me to help them through divorces. Sometimes divorces can be really messy, and these people have hired me to help them stay loving and kind through the divorce while also staying strong and asking for what they want and what they need. And so we set the goals of helping them move through that trying time and that grief and that loss, as well as all the complications of how do you make this fair for everybody and all of those things. And so I'll use different tools to help them find what their truth is, what their answers are, and keep finding their heart even in the most trying moments. So those are some. I've helped a lot of people sell companies and transition into retirement, which in a strange way is sometimes scary for people, because they've built their identity around a company that they might have built. And so helping them realize that there's so much more than the company they built is really powerful.
Wow, so some really good scenarios to actually seek out a life coach. How do you suggest someone who's stuck or feels isolated to get started on a journey of personal growth?
I love this. There's so many great resources. There's so free, which I love. So now with social media, we've got YouTube and we've got TikTok, and I mean, you name it, right? So there's so many great people. One of my favorites, if you are working on your relationship, there's a woman by the name of Kim Pollender, and you can find her all over the place, but I know her on Instagram. She is actually a dear friend. We went to grad school together, and she is an expert on relationships. And she uses something called cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, to help people learn why they fight. So she's a great resource for that. I have another amazing woman. Her name's Katie Hammond, and her handle on Instagram is Hooked on Organics, I think. And she is brilliant about getting toxicity out of your life. And so she helps people realize whether like products, household products are toxic, which all of this affects us, right? So if we are consuming food that is not as healthy as we could, or if we're using products that aren't as clean as they can be, that all affects our lives. And so that's why I love the like looking at things holistically. And so Katie is brilliant at that. She will help you find clean products, and she also talks about like toxic relationships, and just really making sure you are surrounding yourself with love. They of course can follow me. I'm always giving ideas and tools to like, because my social media presence is really to give people free free resources. And so I've got a bunch of worksheets on my website as well, such as like setting boundaries or working through fear. And those are all just out there for everybody to do their own journey and be self-guided. And then of course, if you have the financial resources, there's so many great retreats and programs and healing modalities, and everything from breath work to meditation to yoga. Like there's so many possibilities. And what I want to encourage people is, if one doesn't work for you, just keep trying, because another one might be exactly what you need. So don't. And growth is possible for everyone.
Wow, awesome. Um, you had talked a little bit about retreats. Do you offer retreats, or how would somebody go about that? And kind of what is a retreat?
I do offer retreats. I do them all over the world. Last year I did them in San Diego and Dominican Republic. This year I'm still deciding on where I'm going to host them. And for me, a retreat is a time for people to kind of step out of their day-to-day routine and learn and experience things and experiment with possibility. And so my retreats are designed around letting go of what's not working for you and then adding in what will be more powerful and more beneficial. So whether that is a better mindset or taking action in the direction of your dreams. So and then we do a lot of fun things, because I want to have fun at the retreat too. So I do all the things that I love. So it might be some sound healing or yoga, or I bring in a chef and make really amazing meals with people. And so, but there's so many different types of retreats. Like if somebody's more religious, there's great religious retreats. There, if somebody's not religious, there's great spiritual retreats. You can do them just on breath work. You can do them just on yoga. So there's so many cool things in this world. And so it's really just about listening to your soul and finding that something that sparks you.
Wow, cool. When people go to retreats, are there also other people there, or is it just like you and that person?
I do both. So I do group retreats, but then I do private intensives as well. So somebody in San Diego and spend 3 days with me, and we work on a number of different things that we've kind of talked about. And yeah, so it's really just dependent on the retreat and the facilitator.
Interesting. Now, when it's a group retreat, when there's other people around, does that sometimes help some other people to kind of get out of their shell and kind of heal a little bit more?
It can. It There's some magic that happens bringing people together all with the same intention. And even if that person is too shy to speak up or too scared, just sitting in that environment and in that circle can be very, very healing. And it's not for everybody. Some people, being in a group is way too uncomfortable, so they might want to start on more of an individual path or online path first. And that's okay too. I think the important thing is that somebody starts where they're at. Now, I do like to push people out of their comfort zone a little bit. So if somebody is afraid to be in a group, I like looking at why. Like if somebody has a hard time with trust, maybe going and doing a group experience can help them break through some of those things around trust. Of course, you want to vet the experience and make sure there's good reviews and all of that, but it could be really, really valuable to help break through some of your old patterns and experience life in new ways.
Wow, neat, neat. It definitely sounds like it's fun mixed with learning about yourself and learning kind of how to heal.
That's right. That's right.
So you've openly spoke about your childhood trauma. So what advice do you have for those struggling with healing from past wounds?
Start where you can is, I think, the most important thing, and trust that the universe is only going to give you what you're ready to heal. And so I think the world is magically designed to only give us what we can handle at the right time. Because if somebody's gone through tremendous trauma, it can be to even think about talking about it again, because maybe we think we've compartmentalized it and we've locked it in a box, and if I talk about it, it's going to bring up all those bad things. But my experience is, if we don't talk about it, if we don't get it out of that box or that compartment, that it influences our life in negative ways, unexpectedly, unconsciously. So for me specifically, when I was younger, I had a lot of anger issues. Fortunately, I played sports in high school, and so that was a really healthy outlet for my anger that I was feeling. But it was scary when I started to let that anger come out, because I had all these associations that being an angry person was bad or wrong, or I would be evil like my dad, or all the judgments I had. And I had to start somewhere, because otherwise that anger was going to eat me up alive. And so I've been very blessed to find different healers and different programs through my whole life to help me through some of that trauma. And yeah, so starting where they're at, giving themselves some compassion, self-love, and really, like, remembering you are magnificent and wonderful no matter what happened to you, because so many people that have had trauma think they are the trauma. And I want to be the one to say, you are not. You're like a beautiful, beautiful, sparkly pearl, and you deserve to be free of that pain and the suffering. And there's a lot of tools out there.
Wow, what a great way to look at it. So how can people that are dealing with mental health issues, how can they start integrating mental health care with their overall self-improvement journey?
If it's more extreme, I would say really, really get some support. NAMI is a great organization, and it's the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And they have so many resources for families of loved ones, as well as the person that's going through the mental health crisis. And really having professionals to support you and your family through it is important. And just like anything, don't give up. I know some of the wait lists are long, or maybe you run into obstacles like finances and stuff, but keep going. And maybe the first person you talk to isn't the most supportive or helpful, or they might say things you don't want to hear, which can be hard. But keep going and keep asking for help, because there is so much help out there. You do not have to go through this alone. So I think that's like the most important thing. And then for somebody's mental health, there's so many beautiful, beautiful ways to help ourselves. One could be detoxifying our lifestyle about things we're getting in our consciousness. So maybe it's what you're following on social media. If it makes you feel bad and it doesn't support you and make you feel better, maybe it's time to stop following that. Or maybe the news affects you in a negative way. And just really having the courage to design a world that supports you in the best way possible. And so sometimes it's going to be ending friendships or relationships is in an unhealthy way and they're toxic in your life. And so all of those are very self-loving choices to help you on your mental health as well as your like self-growth journey.
Now, you touched on social media. How social media is everywhere today.
Yeah.
How does that affect people's mental health?
Yeah. I'm not an expert in it, but I do have a little bit of experience of it. First off, if we're scrolling right away when we wake up, it actually dumps in cortisol into our bodies, and that can lead to like just being distracted and change our whole day. So often scroll until give yourself 30 minutes to wake up, have a slow morning, do your thing, and let your brain kind of come into a healthy place. So that's one thing. And then, you know, these algorithms are designed to keep us addicted, and they're all designed to keep us on them. And so it's important for us to overpower the design of that technology, of that marketing, and really take our lives back. You know, there's some great things about social media too, right? We can get inspired and get ideas about our favorite recipes and watch little animals and, you know, whatever. But also it's just important to be living, you know, putting the device down and getting outside. Nature is the most healing place any of us can be. And so being present is the best gift we can give ourselves and the people we love. And that all requires just putting our phones down.
I was gonna say it kind of seems like it's a double-edged sword. It's really great in some ways to find some great resources, like you said, cooking videos, finding stuff that you like. But on the other hand, the addictive part that they just keep you in and keep scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your documentary, Cracked. When did it release?
It was released November 11th this past year. And I chose that day because it was Veterans Day. And my dad was a super proud Marine. He was so proud. He actually painted his house maroon and gold. So yeah.
So tell me a little bit about it. Give us, let us know what it's about.
It's a 20-minute documentary, and really it's about my journey of finding love and acceptance of my father beyond his struggles with schizophrenia. And it's designed in a way to hopefully inspire people for their own hope and healing in their life. And yeah, so it's been a beautiful piece. My dad was super excited to make it with me. He unfortunately died before it was finished, so he never got to see the final product in the physical form of being a human. I'm sure his spirit is part of it every day, but he was really excited because he wanted people to learn from everything we had gone through.
Wow. So, it deals with trauma and healing through the lens of your father. What were some of the most difficult and rewarding parts of making the documentary?
Difficult was putting myself out there. It took me years. I felt called to do this film for a long time, and it took me a long time to say yes to it and to be so vulnerable. And that at first was super scary. And now I'm just super, super happy I did it, because now I get to help other people in some small way or maybe even a big way. And what else was hard about the filming? Just producing a film was a whole new process, and it took so much time and energy and money. I started the project thinking it was going to be one cost, and it was so much more than I ever knew it was going to be. And I think that because if I would have known, I might not have done it. So it was good that I learned as I went along, and it all worked out. You know, one of the most beautiful things about, speaking specifically about the cost of the film, my dad actually left me some money when he died, which was a complete shock because the way he was living, I didn't expect any of me. And I got to use all of that for this film, which I thought was like so divine that he actually got to contribute to making this film happen. So I would say that was like one of the unexpected beautiful moments of the whole process. Is just like, wow, the fact that he had anything to give me, and then that it helped to bring this story into the world is really, really special.
Wow, awesome. How do you think the film can impact the conversation around mental health, especially in families?
I, my hope is that it makes the conversation more approachable because it is and can be a hard topic. So many people avoid it or skirt around it. And I hope that this, it's okay to talk about it. And as part of the film, I talk about being able to hold both the love and the fear of my father at the same time. And I think that's such an important message for people that, you know, we can fear them and love them at the same time. We can take care of them and be resentful at the same time. Like it's it's hard for some of these families what they have to go through to make sure their loved one is safe and that they're safe. And there's no real answers for any of this. I'd say there's some institutions and organizations that do better than others. There's some people that are helping more than others, but there's not like a real like this is the path. And so my hope is that this it opens up conversations in families and helps people to see that they're not alone, because when we feel like we're not alone, that is so important, because it I think at the end of the day we all want to be seen good. It's conversations that allow that to happen. So I hope that it really inspires the conversation and dialogue with people.
Wow, that's amazing. What inspired you to make a documentary?
It was just like a calling I got. I didn't even have a TV for like 10 years. So when I got it, I was like, are you sure this message is for me? And I knew it was. And so I have a TV now, and I love watching certain programs, but I didn't for about 10 years. And yeah, so it was pretty funny when I got the message. And then I I'm fearless in a lot of ways in life, probably because of my dad. You know, when I grew up being afraid of my father, it makes everything else seem kind of less scary, to be honest. So tackling something like a documentary, I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. And I did, and I had all the right people come into my life that were supposed to help, um, and I have a lot more to learn. You know, in no way am I like as experienced as some of these amazing filmmakers out there, but I can now say I'm a filmmaker, which is totally wild. I never expected that would be part of my life plan.
Now, where can people see your documentary?
It's on YouTube under my name, Jessica Zemple, and it's called Cracked. And it should be the first thing that pops up on the top of the YouTube channel for them to see it.
So what advice would you give to somebody who feels stuck in their current life situation and doesn't know quite how to begin changing it?
I would say start small, and so small you cannot fail. So if you want to write a book, start with just writing one page and not judging yourself in any way. And then what happens is as we complete those tasks, we build our self-confidence, we build our self-trust because it's an agreement we've made with ourselves. And then the momentum grows, helping us to make bigger decisions and take more action. And so starting small, so small you cannot fail, is my best advice I could give anybody.
Wow, cool. What are some simple steps for somebody to take to start aligning their mind, body, and soul?
For the mind, we could do something like listing these negative thoughts that we talked about earlier. Is like, what judgments do you have about yourself? And then transforming them into something more positive, and start looking at that list and kind of repeating that, because whatever you focus on grows. And so by focusing on the positive affirmations about yourself, that will start to change your whole inside world. Body would be about cutting out the things that aren't working for you, whether it's relationships or habits, and also just really your physical body, getting nourishment and getting movement and taking care of yourself. All of that will help you in creating that alignment and really living life in your best possible way. And the soul part, honest with yourself. What is it you really want? Where are you naturally drawn to? So, of all the social media accounts you find yourself following, is it home improvement ones? Is that something that you want to try and do? Or is it growing a garden, or, whatever it is? And maybe there's a friend you're a little jealous of because they're traveling and you want to go camping more, or whatever it is. So really just allowing yourself to be honest with yourself and get to what the true dream is. And so doing all of those things in conjunction keep your life and helps life flow in the most magical ways.
Now, what are some of your hobbies besides life coaching?
Oh, I have so many. I love biking and hiking and camping and skiing and being out on the water with my stand-up paddleboard, cooking meals for friends. I love my family, so I go see them in Minnesota as much as I can. And reading and just there's so many wonderful things in this world to do.
Now, I also saw that you did a solo silence retreat.
I did. I've done a couple of them. Yeah. So the first one I did was 8 days. Yeah.
So tell my audience exactly what a solo silence retreat is.
Yeah. So it is a sacred time for me to just connect with myself and the universe or source or spirit, God, whatever resonates for the people listening. And it is super hard because we have so many distractions in our day-to-day life that keep us from ourselves in some ways. And so I do it so I can really cut out the noise to really hear what's important to me and really just allow myself the grace of space. And so Yeah, so the first few days are always really hard because it's so quiet and the thoughts are racing. But then by the end, it's like pure magic. I feel like I'm like floating, and all these beautiful creative ideas flow inside of me. But um, it's really quite the experience, and it was so powerful that I've done a second one, and I had a whole different experience the second time around. So I can't wait to do it a third time and fourth and fifth, because it's been so magical that I yeah, it just needs to be part of my life routine.
Awesome. How long do they last usually?
You can do any length of time, and if somebody is actually curious about it and they just want to start for a single day, you can do that and build yourself up to what I so far. And again, it's always start where you're at and create yourself or set yourself up for success. And there's also that host silent retreats. So the most common name I'm familiar with is a Vipassana center. And so you can sign up for these programs and be guided. And at those places, they actually cook meals for you and help you meditate. And I've actually never done that, but I've had tons of friends do it and love it. So there's lots of ways to do it. I personally just rented a cabin in the woods um, and used that as my retreat place. And then the second time I camped, and I'll go back to the cabin next time. Camping was a little hard because, yeah, it was just super hot when I did it. So I was very uncomfortable.
Now you also you cycled across South Africa?
I did. Yeah. That was raising money for a charity. And part of the way we rode on mountain bikes, and part of it we were on road bikes. And it was super incredible to have an experience like that. Yeah.
So definitely some remarkable experiences. So how did cycling through South Africa, your silent retreats, how have they shaped your personality and helped you grow?
The silent retreat showed me how powerful I really was. And sometimes I forget that. And I really believe everybody's super powerful and we forget it. And the kind of discipline to be totally silent and sit for that long, overcome so much. And I didn't get into this part, but I actually fasted the whole time. So that was even harder. So not eating and being quiet for 8 days was, it just was really hard. And so it showed how much strength I have within. And I guess the same is true with the ride across Africa, that I know I can sign up for things that I think are impossible. And it really just takes building strength. So I had to train for that ride, and I had to make that commitment, and I had to really prioritize myself and my fitness in order to be strong enough to do that. And there's something beautiful about that, especially I'm a recovering people pleaser. And so it's really easy for me to make everybody else a priority. And so to have an individual goal like that, where I couldn't make other people the priority because I needed to be safe on this bike ride and strong, it was really quite lovely, because I was just like, nope, this is what I'm doing for me. And that was really important. And it's shown me how important that is every day of my life.
What do you believe is the key to creating more balance in life and letting go of judgments?
Creating more balance starts with intentionality and investing your energy. and making sure you're investing it in the ways that matter the most. And so I look at my energy like a currency. So if I have 100 units to spend every day, I want to spend them on things that inspire me, make me feel good, lift me up. I want to be with people I love and treasure and cherish. And I don't want to spend that energy in places that have a zero return, really. And so I think getting fierce with my priorities and fierce with my energy and using it only on the places that matter the most really helps to create balance. Because I think balance is not necessarily I only work 40 hours a week. It's more about, am I balancing all the things that are important in the priorities of my life? And so if I love working and I work 100 hours a week, I don't see that as a problem. I only see it a problem if I'm missing my child's soccer game because I feel obligated to work more than I really want to. So really just being true to oneself, I think helps to create the balance. Judgments, that's just work. I think everybody's judgments. And when we can just be gentle and kind and laugh at ourselves sometimes for the judgments we have, and just start to be more loving, and just start where you can. And I even say, like, even if you don't believe it right away, you can just say it and until you do believe it. And with a lot of practice, it's become natural. So I'll now see what judgment surface is, and then I'll change it. And it's so liberating knowing that I have that kind of power to be kind to myself. And then ultimately, if I'm kind to myself, I'm going to be kinder to other people too, which is such a beautiful part of all this work. Is like, the more I'm uplifted, the more I'm inspired, the more I can give to other people and serve other people and help them in their lives too. So it's such a rewarding way to live.
How do you stay sorry. How do you stay inspired to keep healing others even when things get tough in your own life?
Sometimes that's the best time to be a healer. When I find myself feeling something or going through a moment, helping others always makes me feel better. I don't know what happens, like biologically or chemically or spiritually, but just being in service to other people always brings me out of what I might be worried about and focus on them. And so in some ways, it's actually really powerful to have that person. Everybody can do that. They don't have to be a life coach, right? Like, we can volunteer with the local animal shelter at the hospital, whatever it might be for each person. We can all help others. And I guarantee that will help you feel better no matter what you're going through.
Awesome. Are there any projects or any specific goals that you're working on right now that you're excited about?
Ooh, yes. I have another film series that I am playing around with, which is all about different healing modalities, because I just want the world to know that there's so many possibilities, and that, yeah, there's just like all these different cultures, and they have so many rich traditions. And I think it'd be fun to bring some of those to our world. And then I got like a comedy dropped in my heart the other day. I don't know how to write a comedy, but I didn't know how to make a film or coach or, bike across South Africa either. So who knows? There might be a comedy coming too. I don't know. Since I just released the film, I kind of am giving myself a couple months to have fun with, celebrating that. I've got a couple film festivals that I'm in February. So come, I'll probably have a better idea where I'm going to invest my time. But so you'll have to stay in touch so you can see next.
Oh, I definitely will. Most definitely. That sounds awesome. So if you could give one piece of advice to someone who wants to live their dream, what would that be?
Go for it. Just start. Don't hold back. Don't live with any regrets. Like just start. Start small. And if you need a cheerleader, just reach out to me, because I guarantee I can be the best cheerleader in your corner.
What's the greatest lesson that you've learned from all your life experiences that you could share with everybody?
Compassion is the greatest gift we could give ourselves and others. That's, to me, compassion is loving somebody regardless of circumstance, regardless of anything that's happened, seeing beyond their illness or their behavior or maybe something they've done. And if we could all extend compassion to each other, just how different our world could be.
Wow. What's your definition of success?
It's changed over time. Success, to me now, is more about fulfillment. And fulfillment to me is doing the things that resonate with me deeply. And so if it's reading a special book that calls my attention, or watching the sunset, I watch every sunset I can. To me, success, it used to be about making a ton of money, because I somehow thought money meant safety, and money's important, right? Because it allows me to have experiences, but the success is so much bigger than that. It's really just living life fully, even the hard things. It's like being human and letting myself cry and letting myself laugh and being goofy and just really living, I would say, is success to me.
That's an amazing definition of success. I've asked a lot of people that, and that is probably the best response that I've ever received.
Aww, thanks. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. It has been such a pleasure to get to know you, get to talk to you. If people want to reach out, do you have a website, social media, anything like that where they can reach out to you at?
Yeah, I'm super easy to find. Jessica Zemple, Zemple. And my website is lifeshucker.com, lifeshucker.com. And you can find me everywhere on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. You can email me directly. And I try to respond to every email that I get or every comment that I get. So please reach out and let me know how I can support you in your best life.
Awesome. Well, everybody listening, please check out Jessica's documentary. Check out her book that she's written. And it has been a great pleasure to get to talk to you. And hopefully we get to do another podcast soon together.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Very welcome. And once again, thank you for being on. So goodbye, everybody, and have a great rest of the night.
Thanks for listening to Conversations Ignite. See you next time.